So there's a lot of talk going on right now about what do we do with religious education? Is Sunday school not working as a model anymore? Do we need to do family ministry? Do we need to send all the children into the worship service? Like, what do we do with religious education? And so I wanted to share with you my vision for how we can use small group ministry as the engine for what we do with Unitarian Universalist religious exploration, leadership development, justice work, and really have the core process of Unitarian Universalism be driven by small group ministry. So first, I want you to invite your religious educator or educators and ministry team to check out this stream if they're not already doing so. All right, so after the fact, here in the group and via my Facebook page, I'll share a link so anyone, even if they're not in the group or Facebook, can check this out, because this is an important conversation. What do we do with our children, youth, young adults to make Unitarian Universalism awesome and grow and bring our values fully into the world? So first, a little background. I grew up going to the First Unitarian Church of Providence, born and raised there. My mother, who's a member of our group, was born in that congregation. I will say my parents met in youth group, though I was not conceived there. But so I grew up very active in leadership, and then in my 20s got involved with leading our youth group. And it was a tiny group, and 6 to 8 showing up. And what I did, just studying literature from other denominations on how they do youth ministry, realized that a lot of their models for youth ministry was basically their adult group process adapted for youth. And so I'm like, all right, so this small group ministry thing is how other denominations and larger congregations are doing youth ministry. So we used a small group process to grow our youth group from 8 to over 60 registered. We started off meeting in this big basement space, and it ended up having to break up into small groups. And is that experience leading our this small group based youth group that made me want to have a small group experience for myself. Like I was a young adult, and there were not a lot of small group opportunities within our congregations at that time. Small group ministry and covenant groups as we know it now did not exist. So I was going to go to seminary and start a small group revolution. That was my plan. I didn't go to seminary, but I did start the first small group ministry website for Unitarian Universalists in 2001. And then working with others, we relaunched that as the Small Group Ministry Network in 2004. And that became a nonprofit, for a while a UUA affiliate organization, and has been really the driving force behind our association's small group ministry movement. Okay, so I've been working small group ministry. I worked with that youth group for a decade, and then that led to working with adults small group ministry. And I'll tell you, our popular small group ministry model, at least the way I do it, and the way the Small Group Ministry Network advocates, is for me essentially youth group for adults. So when we are working with children, youth, young adults, and really bringing them together to connect, to explore religious themes, religious issues, life issues, to really do that well, we have to do it in a small group format. Otherwise people don't get to share. Okay, we can't do big, giant, go into real depth with huge groups like 30, 40, 50 people. If we want to do serious reflection on issues central to what it means to be a person, Unitarian Universalist, cosmic issues, religious issues, social justice issues, it's important that we use a small group process. So I think that what we can start doing with our children, youth, young adults, and adults, which I haven't seen a lot of, is start looking at all of those as different forms of group ministry. So if you look at your typical religious education program, we have people gathering, adults gathering with children to do different curricular activities, and it's a small group, okay? It's like less than 15. And then, so there are all these different age-based groups. And then we have youth, we pull them together in youth group, and we call it youth group most of the time. And then there's, they graduate, teens graduate, whether they go to college or stay locally, We have young adult groups meeting. We have campus groups meeting. Later on, when people come into our congregations, we are getting them into covenant groups, small group ministries. So we have these groups that are happening. What we don't do, which is the problem for me, is be serious about the fact that at all levels of Unitarian Universalism, from like elementary on up, a Unitarian Universalist small group process is driving our ministry. If we were to take that seriously, and this is what I've been talking to my clients with and I teach in my trainings, and I'm working on some online trainings, so things we're talking about now and all of my small group training, facilitator training, that's moving online soon. More on that later. But so we can look at what we're doing with children, youth, young adults, adults, and elders. I helped my grandmother start a small group. We can look at that and say, all right, now, even if we're bringing different curricula, there's a common group structure. Now, thanks to how successful small group ministry has been, when we have classes come together, kids coming together in classes, usually some of our popular small group ministry elements and structures are happening. So we gather. What happens? Often opening ritual, chalice lighting, check-in, and then we do a bunch of stuff. And maybe there's joys and sorrows, who knows? And then there is, hopefully, a checkout and closing, all right? That's like our basic small group structure. Now, imagine when we are working with children, regardless of what the grade is and what the curricula is, we were to say, all right, now, whether we're working with this curriculum or that curriculum, spirit play, something else, at the heart of what we're doing is bringing them together in a small group to do some kind of religious exploration. Well, essentially, they're in some kind of small group for children. So what I would say we should do is, and I've been practicing this, like, so my wife is a minister of religious education, Amy Friedman. So she's at our Concord Mass congregation. She also curates the amazing Alice the Chalice Facebook page. You should all go like Alice the Chalice on Facebook if you're into family and religious education resources and other awesome things. But so I've been practicing this whenever I have a chance to work with kids, children from 6th graders and really up. And I should note, in addition to all my work with congregations, I'm a children's television producer, so I work as a producer and educator on nationally syndicated PBS Kids, so doing all the activities segments. So I'm always working on how do we engage, empower, and do hands-on work with kids of different ages. So imagine that as we are bringing kids in, we're not just taking an adult leaders, and saying, we're leading a process for you. Instead, we're saying, our goal for our children, and everyone's going to start at different points because they're coming into our congregation at different times, different ages, and they're moving around, is so it's for me, I want every single child who grows up a Unitarian Universalist to master our small group process of gathering as Unitarian Universalists and knows how to do all the elements, lead all the elements, have the competencies of what we need to facilitate and lead an amazing Unitarian Universalist small group. We're exploring spiritual, religious, Mongol, cosmic questions, different themes, everything that's important to us, okay? Because if we get serious about training them, it doesn't have to be like, you are being trained to be a small group leader and you're in 4th grade or 3rd grade. No. But we're going to say, all right, we want all of our children to know that from the time we gather now as younger children, at the core of what we do as Unitarian Universalists is we gather in community. We identify issues that are worthy of our exploration, from big religious questions to life challenges, to relationships, to social justice issues, and together, bringing in different resources, and we can use curricula, we can reflect on these issues, explore these issues, bring in our life experience, also do activities, and learn together and reflect together. And as we do that well, say looking at different issues, we can do that collaboratively. So have children helping to identify what they care about and want to talk about. When I was working with our youth group, what I would do is start every year by having a big process where I outline, well, we're looking at big questions, religious, ethical, moral, life, social justice issues. Let them know that this is what's fair game for our exploration. Now, we're going to do a big brainstorm session. We turn on some rock or whatever music, Pink Floyd, they'd pick it. And then we would do a brainstorming process with index cards where they would write on index cards all the things that they would like to talk about. And so we'd do a session where people were writing on index cards. Then I'd gather them and read some examples. Oh, is there a God? Is there life after death? Are we just fungus on a cracker? Like this little film growing on Earth? That was an actual question. So I'd read some and then say, all right, let's do some more. And so we generate in like 30 minutes, 100 cards. And then we'd put them up on a big wall and prioritize them. And then taking those, I'd say, all right, let's figure out, we know that we want to start with this and that. I'd always invite whoever wants to stay after our group and help figure out how we're going to work with the process. What I found is once we identified what they were interested in talking about, they had this huge buy-in. And from the brainstorm every year, basically what that did is set up all the themes covered in our popular curricula. So I would go to my director of religious education, Kathy Sagal, longtime friend and collaborator, and say, all right, we want to look at these issues related to, is there a God, and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, what do you got? Kathy, what do you got? And so she would go to the wall and pull off, all right, we have this curricula, that curricula. And so then I would draw from that and bring that into our youth group. Now, that's senior high, so very collaborative. And what happened there? Well, very quickly, the youth realized, like, all right, what we're doing is exploring the things we care about, and we're able to bring in our life experience, and Peter's empowering us. What I would do is I wouldn't just lead everything. Once I kind of set the model, they would light the chalice. I would invite someone to facilitate check-in. I teach them all how we do check-in, why we do it that way, why we're not interrupting, why we're going around in a circle. And then when it came time for the conversation, the topic, generally they just want me to pick, but they felt like they owned it, even though I was bringing in, I'd write down notes from curricula and bring it in. I'd teach them to facilitate the conversation. So my goal was that I want this to be their group. So instead of my being the leader of the group, my approach is I am the coach to the teens that I'm advising the group of. And that elevated everything. And they would come and come. They'd never ask what we were doing because they trusted it. They always enjoyed it because we made space for their life experience and sharing and getting to know each other. And it was fun. And, I realized what we were doing is really powerful when in the parking lot one Sunday, a mom comes up and says to me, Peter, I just want to tell you, we were talking with Alex. Not Alex's real name, I'm making the name up. Alex, call it Alex. Alex said, Mom, I made a really important realization. Oh, what's that? I realized that the person who I really am is the person I am in youth group. And I need to work the rest of my life to figure out how to be that person the rest of the week. I'm like, oh my God. So powerful. So that I wanted to help everybody have that kind of experience, including me, which sparked my starting the small group ministry network, communicating with others and collaborating with others to do that. But now if you look at children, bring that small group approach and coaching to children. Imagine if when we're having our younger classes gather, regardless of what curricula we're doing, we're making sure that if they're old enough, all the children can light the chalice. The children can facilitate check-in, or help, depending on the age. We can go really young with having children help with different tasks because it's leadership development. And one of the reasons that young people leave our movement is because our expectations for their leadership abilities are so low. So if they're 5-star leaders and we're treating them like 1 or 2-star leaders, they're going to leave. So we have to raise our leadership expectations for all of our children. So they can facilitate questions, they can help design the sessions that we're working on, and writing questions. They're like, we can start going through and looking at what are the skills that when these children are teenagers, young adults, if they're going to be like a top-notch small group leader, even whether maybe they're not going to stay in our congregations, maybe they're going to go to college, maybe they're going to go somewhere else, maybe they're going to move someplace where there's no UU group or congregation. We want all of them to know how do you bring people together, explore issues of meaning and purpose, help people share, reflect, grow together. And when we tap into our innermost values and think about what kind of world and lives we want to create, that inspires us to take action together. And so imagine if everyone growing up in our program knew that and was empowered to, wherever they go, they could start a group. You might not start a congregation, but you could say, oh wow, everything I learned in my congregation set me up to be able to pull together people I care about or I'm friends with or acquaintances and run an amazing community group where we just explore issues of meaning and purpose together. I think that would do so much to grow our congregations because the children are being treated with respect and our expectations for them are higher. Our teachers are no longer, and this requires a shift in culture, are not the ones who are there to do everything, but are there to coach the children on doing much more. Now, we still need them to bring in the curricula, work with the congregation to develop like what's coming into the congregation, into the session. But if you think that every single thing we do with all age groups can be this core UU religious exploration process, and it can be way more collaborative. We can be working with the children to identify, we're going to be looking at X, Y, and Z. Is there media that we can bring and watch together? Are there movies we can watch? What are activities we can do? And by ramping up the collaboration with our children, I think we can have them take on so much ownership of the program and excitement of their own ability that by the time they come to coming of age, we're not trying to convince them to stay in our programs. They're leaders in our programs. I had a conversation with a great religious educator at General Assembly recently, and she asked, Peter, how should I be communicating with my youth? I have so much trouble literally getting in touch with them, communicating what's happening, what they need to do, when to come, all these things. And I said, well, I feel like if you're having trouble communicating with your youth, one of the problems is that you're the one communicating with your youth. If we're doing Unitarian Universalism right, I think we need to have, by the time we get to youth group, that we've been raising these young Unitarian Universalists to be leaders. They are leaders. We have leaders coming into coming of age. We have leaders coming into youth group, and that they are helping to lead the program. So our advisors, youth advisors, are coaching and supporting amazing teens who are leading the program. Okay, so we can talk another time about technology, communication, how do you deal with cell phones and teens. But the notion that, how do we communicate using technology with young people who aren't leading the program and are maybe disengaged and we're having trouble getting them to come? So I think they're being leaders is huge. I want to tell you a story, and then I'm going to wrap up, and we can continue this conversation, and I'll be sharing more about trainings later. I led the congregation where I'm now with my wife. I led their neighboring activist program a couple years ago. So the spring session of that. I won't go into what the content was. It was climate justice related. But what was important is that within that group, now we had specific things we were working on in terms of curricula, content, but I always bring a small group approach. Like, I'm coaching these young people to be Unitarian Universalist group leaders, so wherever they go, they can bring people together, facilitate exploration, and help people's lives be transformed. It's like that's real ministry that they can do anywhere and everywhere. So one of the first things I realized is, all right, some of these kids have no idea how to light a chalice. So, man, I'd ask, does somebody want to light the chalice? And there's a look of anxiety. I'm like, and this is a fairly new congregation for us. They did not have experience lighting a chalice. Now, it seems like a simple thing. Lighting a chalice, why should they be able to do that? Well, why shouldn't they? And how much can you care about our ritual if you've never done it? So I would ask, who wants to light the chalice? And I'd get volunteers. Who wants to help lead check-in or start check-in? But so one time, I picked on this, let's call him Steve. I picked Steve to light the chalice. He was so nervous. He's like, "Oh, I've never really used matches before." I'm like, "Well, that's good, but this is a safe place to do that, and we'll tell you how to do it." So he takes the box matches, lights the match, get the big chalice here, goes to light the chalice, and he tips say here's the match. He goes to light it, and he tips it down to the flame. What happens? The flame goes up and starts to burn his fingers. Like, ah! Blows the match. And everyone's like, oh man. Now they're like ready to boo this kid. So I said, no, shh, guys, it's important. He needs to know how to do this. We all need to learn these. We all need to learn the different things to lead a great group. And lighting a chalice is part of it. So, all right, who can give him tips? So one of the others in the class said, hold it horizontally so you don't burn yourself. So he's like, all right, shh. Goes to light it, lights the chalice, flame comes up, and the others in the group start nodding, and he pulls the match back and goes, and blows out the chalice. They're like, no! They're like, I'm like, shh, all right, who? And yeah, there's this moment where like, is this group gonna turn on him? I'm like, no, wait, guys. What does he need to do to successfully light the chalice? So over there, she says, all right, what you need to do is light the chalice, hold it horizontally, lower it, light the flame. Once the flame's lit, move it away, turn sideways, and then blow. So he lights the chalice, lifts it, moves it away, turns, blows. Whoosh, the chalice is lit. The group goes, hey! Everybody is cheering. Now, what does that do? Well, there's just in that one moment, here, this one out of the 10 or so kids, it feels so empowered. Now, next time, he's going to be able to light the chalice with confidence. So we make sure all the children at that age can light the chalice. Now, same thing goes for check-in. Can you help lead the check-in? Can you introduce the check-in and help make sure that runs well? When it's time to figure out what we're going to do, can you say, hey, we're going to end a little bit early, or maybe if some of you want to stay, we're going to talk, me, other advisor or other teacher, we're going to talk about what we're doing next. Can we have a couple volunteers to help us figure out the best activities? We can incorporate them as leaders so early. And the more we do that, the more that we are building their ability, their competence, and moving them into a leadership role. And so if we start doing this younger, then say you start working on you don't start by trying to get your youngest, say second graders or whatever, to lead everything. You start simple. When you get to like 4th, 5th grade, well, there are times when we can be meeting with children of different ages, and we can have older kids helping to facilitate activities and conversation with younger children, and get to the point where and this is what I would love, when we get to coming of age, we're not like, all right, now we're going to challenge you to articulate your beliefs to the full congregation. I would hope that by the time someone's been born raised and they get to be 8th, 9th grade, they know how to lead an amazing UU group. They know how to write small group sessions. They know how to facilitate sessions. They know how to take the issues that we're working with, and based on our social justice related conversations, or talking about issues of meaning and purpose and our principles, and how does that issue that we're looking at relate to our UU principles and our values, what does that call us to do in the world? And we identify that there's the social justice issue, that they know how to organize social justice events. So, the things that, I guess I want to wrap up saying, the things that we would dream for adult Unitarian Universalists to do, make that our objective for, some things adults can do, some things kids can't. But if we take the expectations we have for adults and say, well, our young people can do that. They should be doing that by the time they're in 8th grade, and start organizing our ministry around training and empowering them to do that. We just lift everything. And by lifting our expectations across the board, so many who have left because they haven't been challenged, haven't been entrusted with responsibility, who haven't been empowered to lead in our congregations as young people, I think they're going to stay. The other thing that's powerful is if we start looking at our small groups with children and youth, and explicitly say, hey, this is small group ministry we're doing. The small group process we're using here is the same we use, like say if I'm working with, whether it's 6th graders or 7th, 9th, whatever, to say what we're doing here, we might talk about some different content, but what we're doing, the way we gather, the way Unitarian Universalists gather in groups, is something that we do throughout our lives. And if you grow up and stay locally after high school, it would be fantastic if you were leading a young adult small group or joining our existing young adult small groups. If you go to a college, or go to college, university, or move somewhere else, that you can be leading a group or participate in a group. And we connect those dots for them so that there's never this question of like, well, how does our children's religious education connect with youth group, young adult groups, campus groups, and adult small groups? It's all a continuous lifespan group-based approach. I think so. That is something. We know that small groups work. We know right now that if you look at church growth literature, it's just saturated with group process. You got to connect people in groups. If you want to do deeper religious exploration and sharing, you've got to have groups. America's facing a loneliness epidemic. If your congregation wants to be relevant in people's lives, we need to connect people in groups. Sherry Turkle, who's at MIT, writes about technology and the self. She says young people are losing their ability to reflect, do self-reflection, because technology is filling the void, that spaces in their lives. We need to create opportunities where we're challenging them to reflect and go deeper. And so we can do that, I think, starting very young. And if we do that and articulate why we're doing it, what the process looks like, that we can make our programs incredibly exciting, collaborative, and empowering for young people, and so exciting for families wanting to get their children involved. So, small group for a lifespan. I would love you to share what is it that, and you can do that as a comment on this post, or if you want to share a longer post in the group sometime during the week. What is it that you're doing in your congregation that brings people together in groups? Like, what are the groups like? And do you have a group process that you use with children, youth, young adults, campus ministry? And then what would it look like if we connected them? How could we connect them? I was going to say, if we start making it clear that these groups are all connected in this just ongoing lifespan group ministry model, then the structure and support and training we give to adult small group ministry facilitators, we can start sharing with younger people. So imagine that there's an annual event where we have all of our small group facilitators and coaches coming together with ministry team, religious educator, with your minister, and small group committee leaders, and talking about the vision for our small groups and doing training and celebration. And imagine if you were in 5th grade and you're really helping to lead this small group experience within your for your age group, or if you're working with more multiple ages coming together. and helping to facilitate. Still working with an adult who's coaching you, following safe congregations. Imagine if that were bringing the children, not only raising the bar for what we expect them to do or think that they can accomplish through groups in our congregations and their role, but to have the way we support and train them be this intergenerational thing. So like religious educator, minister, gathering with all these different leaders. I think for me that's very exciting. So I want now, some of you just come on now. Welcome, goodbye. All right. Thank you for watching. I hope you will, if this is something that sparks your interest or you find exciting, if you have a question, just share a comment. I'd love to fuel conversation in this group for a while. Have conversation go on for a while in this group. And then I've got some small group, like my core small group ministry trainings, how to design and implement and lead a small group ministry program, and then small group ministry facilitator trainings. I'm working on turning those into on-demand, online, video-based courses. So those will be coming out this fall.